This is Priyanka Sarkar, and welcome to The Sport Soul, a space where we explore the real stories and emotions behind strength in sports and in life.
First 2 years I was very depressed, and I won't deny I got help.
థెరపీ అనగానే we think it is mysterious, it is scary. ఏదో ఒక చిన్న చీకటి గదిలో తీసుకెళ్ళిపోయి the psychologist will be asking you, how are you feeling today? What do you feel about it? But therapy is not that. It is something for you to identify about yourself or knowing more about yourself. It is not what happens when you're broken, but it happens when you want to understand yourself more.
దెన్ ఐ డిసైడెడ్ ఒకరోజు అక్క నన్ను థెరపీ జాయిన్ అవ్వమనింది. నీకేమైనా అక్కతో కొట్లాడేవాడిని, అరిచేవాడిని తన్ని. నీకేమైనా పిచ్చారు, నాకేమైనా సైకో అనుకుంటున్నావా, పిచ్చి అనుకుంటున్నావా, ఒకటి బాధపడుతూ ఉంటే థెరపిస్ట్కి వెళ్ళమంటావని ఐ వాజ్ లైక్ దట్. ఒకరోజు అర్థమైపోయింది నాకు, ఒక చిన్న రియలైజేషన్ పాయింట్. ఓకే, నేను వాట్ ఐమ్ ఐ డూయింగ్ టు మై ఫ్యామిలీ, నేను ఇది చేసి ఏదైనా అయితే అలాగా. కాకపోతే నాకు ఒక పక్క అది ఉంది, కానీ ఇంకో పక్క నాకు ఉండాలని లేదు. అలా ఉంది నా మైండ్. స్పిరిచువల్లీ నాకు కాదు, ఇది కాదు, లోకం తప్పు, ఇది కాదు, ఎవరు కరెక్ట్గా లేరు, నాకు తెలిపోయింది. దెన్ ఒకరోజు నాకు ఎందుకో సెకండ్ ఛాన్స్ ఇద్దాం, లైఫ్ ట్రై చేద్దాం అని అక్క దగ్గరికి వెళ్ళి పట్టేసుకొని, నాకు బ్రతకాలని ఉంది, అదేదో థెరపీ అన్నావు కదా, అది చెప్పక్క ట్రై చేస్తానంటే పట్టుకొని ఏడ్చేసింది ఆ రోజు అక్క. అప్పుడు అర్థమైంది థెరపీ అనేది అది పిచ్చిగా ప్రమోట్ చేసాం మనం. దెన్ ఐ అండర్స్టూడ్ ఆ థెరపీ వల్ల నాకు నేను ఆలోచించేదంతా కరెక్ట్ అనింది. నువ్వు ఆలోచించేది కరెక్టే, బాధ కరెక్టే, కాకపోతే దానికి అదర్ సైడ్ కూడా ఉంటుంది కదా అనేసి షీ స్టార్టెడ్ టెల్లింగ్ అదర్ యాంగిల్.
And today I am talking to a clinical psychologist who will take us behind what is therapy, what happens in therapy, and who all need therapy. So Snigdha, thank you so much for gracing one of my episodes, and this is something that adds personal value to me myself as a psychologist or a sports psychologist, because I keep reading a lot about therapy. The most used word is therapy. A few use it because it brings value to them. So I would like to know more about you, more about what is therapy, and can you explain who is qualified to conduct therapy sessions?
Okay, first of all, thank you so much, Priyanka, for having me here. I always enjoy having these conversations with you.
My pleasure.
So I think like you, when you began this podcast, you said that therapy is something very mysterious, and it's a place where the therapist is probably going to take you into a chikati gadi and going to ask you all sorts of questions.
Yes, and it just makes you think. It just opens. If you get the right therapist, it makes you think. Therapist ante ee golil chudu,
ala kadu,
నువ్వు వెళ్తున్నావు అది కాదు.
Okay, but that's far from reality. Psychotherapy, or just therapy as we know it, it's a dynamic process. It's a collaborative effort that involves the therapist and the client or patient, whatever you would like to call this person. Now, when I said therapist is a dynamic and a collaborative effort, it basically involves you sitting across someone and not just sitting and talking.
Yeah,
it's a lot of peeling off the layers in a person's life, trying to understand what are the strengths, what are the blind spots, what are the ways in which we can empower the clients, what are the ways in which we can help them build better skills, what are the ways in which we can help them have healthier relationships, and also we actively engage with them. So when you're in a therapy session and when you're working with a client who is having relationship difficulties, let's say assertiveness, they are finding it very difficult to be assertive in some of the relationships. So we role play. There's active engagement. So the therapist will not just sit across you and listen to your story about you not being assertive in a situation and that how it led to a lot of problems. We analyze the situation. We try to understand what could have caused this, and once we figure out the reasons for it, we also try to empower the client to become more assertive by practicing the skills with them.
Any relation, any family, parents and children relation, brothers and sisters relation, wife and husband, anything, lovers అయినా సరే, మీరు ఏదైనా గొడవలైనా ఏదైనా, ఇట్స్ కామన్ థింగ్. బట్ థెరపీ ఈజ్ మస్ట్. అది తప్పు కాదు, అది ఒక రెగ్యులర్ ప్రాక్టీస్. ప్రతి ఒక్కరు ఫ్యామిలీతో ఏం లేకపోయినా ఇయర్లీ వన్సో ట్వైసో అలవాటు పెట్టుకుని ఒక ఫ్యామిలీ కౌన్సిలింగ్ కానీ, ఓకే ఎలా ఉంది ఇయర్, వాట్స్ హ్యాపెనింగ్, అంతా బాగుంటే కూడా మీరు తీసుకోవాలి.
So we'll do what is known as a role play,
Okay.
where we sit across the client and we describe a situation, and we do some sort of a role play where I'll be playing the part of the client and the client will be playing the part of some XYZ person, and then we'll swap roles and try to inculcate these skills in them. So I think therapy is far from what people usually think about it. So therapy is basically more like a partnership between people, and it aims at fostering self-awareness. It helps an individual to become more empowered and make meaningful changes and also make meaningful choices in their lives. Because when you're actively engaging with someone in therapy, you get to peel off a lot of layers about your own self, about your own life, about the circumstances in your own life. And while you're doing that, there's an insight that develops. Along with that insight, there's this empowerment that also happens. You get to know yourself, you get to know the side of you that you were probably not aware of earlier. And of course, you get to learn new skills.
Yeah.
So it's like preparing yourself. Yeah.
So may I ask who's qualified to conduct therapy sessions?
So it depends on who's receiving the therapy. So there are counseling psychologists and there are clinical psychologists. Now, clinical psychologists typically work with not only clients who have, major depressive disorder or a generalized anxiety and the other variants of anxiety disorders, but they also work with more severe disturbances like mood disorders, a bipolar condition, or schizophrenia, or and all that. But again, the word therapy, is loosely used. Every set of conditions, they have to be treated in a different way. So when you're saying therapy, I would want to understand what kind of therapy are we referring to here, because a client who has schizophrenia will also undergo therapy, but a different kind of therapy. A client who has bipolar condition, bipolar disorder, can also go through therapy, but a different kind of therapy again. Ditto with depression, anxiety, somatoform conditions, or any other condition for that matter. So we need to be very clear about what kind of therapy are we talking about here. Every condition has its own set of interventions that people engage in.
So you said every condition has its own way of being dealt with through therapy. So I want to get it on record that talking to your friend, talking to a family member, or just talking like in a group of friends over a cup of coffee is not therapy, right?
No, most definitely not.
And just letting out your hurt or pain, or just going on a movie to just get it over with is not therapy, right?
No, they are just distractions, the various ways in which you cope. And therapy is not as straightforward and as simple as that.
So what is the difference between talking to a family member or a friend or talking to a therapist?
మీకు ప్రాబ్లం వచ్చినప్పుడే థెరపీ కాదండి, మీరు బాగున్నప్పుడే థెరపీ తీసుకుంటే ఈరోజు మీరు ఒక పని బెటర్గా చేస్తుంటే రేపు ఆ పని ఇంకా వందెంతలు చేయగలుగుతారు. అండ్ టుడే మీరు చెప్పినట్టు అగ్ని పర్వతాలు ఏది బ్లాస్ట్ అని ఐఎమ్ ఏబుల్ టు హ్యాండిల్ టుడే అంటే దట్ ఫేజ్ ఈజ్ అవుట్.
ఓకే,
నేను అంతం చేయాలనుకున్నది ఒకటి, కానీ నేను అంతం చేసింది నా ఆలోచన అంతం చేశాను ఫైనల్లీ.
First of all, I would like to say that friends are a very integral part of our lives, and when I say that they are not the same, I do not want to diminish the importance of friends in any way.
Yeah, certainly
because
not.
Even in my life, my friends have played a very important role, and with all due respect, they have helped me in a lot of ways. But this is how therapy is very different from talking to a friend. First of all, I think therapy tends to be very, very structured. It's a place where you get undivided attention. Your therapist is very objective. They're not biased. The therapist will also basically they're qualified to understand the kind of conditions that you're going through. All these advantages that I just noted are may not be seen in your friends,
Yes.
despite their best interests in you.
Yes.
They may not always be objective. And there's this, you cannot have a dual relationship, meaning when I'm personally involved with someone, involved as in if this person is a very good friend of mine, I know them so much that sometimes being objective becomes very difficult. And therapy is all about being as objective and as neutral as possible so that you can empower the client in as many ways as possible.
So let's say when people tell somebody that I want to see a therapist. Most commonly used words are you crazy? Or are you weak? Or are you going through a breakup? What is it? Let me handle. Or let's go play some sport. Or let us just go and take up a dance class.
Yeah.
But how different is taking up a dance class or going to a movie different from attending therapy, one? And is therapy only for weak and crazy people?
So I think this perception of being weak, crazy, broken, and all these words that get thrown around so much are stemming from a lot of stigma that we are surrounded with, that we are surrounded by always, and a misunderstanding about mental health conditions. There's a lot of fear associated with mental health conditions. It's coming from poor awareness. They don't know what it is. So if you don't know something, you fear it because it's uncertain. There's, of course, a very poor media representation of what mental illnesses are.
Yes.
And how people are institutionalized. So when all these things are put together, words like weak, crazy, broken get tossed around like nobody's business. So I would just want to first put it on record that nobody is broken, nobody is crazy, or nobody is, let's say that, what's the other word you used? Weak. So I always feel that therapy, in fact, the fact that one is seeking therapy, it means that they are extremely brave and courageous. It takes a lot of courage for one to, admit that there's a problem in the first place and seek help. Given the circumstances or given the kind of society we live in where there has been a stigma, we all have grown up listening to words like mental, broken, pagal hai kya, dimag ka doctor, and all these things. So when you have grown up in such circumstances, accepting that there is a problem and seeking help, working on yourself, working on parts of yourself that you haven't seen in many, many years. And these parts are not very comfortable to deal with. Right, so we have to look at them, you have to accept them, and you have to sort of work on them. I cannot bring myself up to say that they are broken because it takes a lot of courage. It takes tremendous amount of courage to do that, and just the fact that you are prioritizing your well-being over anything else. You are focusing on the ways in which you can be a better version of yourself. How many people actually do that?
Yes, very true.
So that all these things are not indicators of crazy. At least not in my book.
No, definitely not. They're strong and courageous. As you said, someone gutsy.
Yeah. So I always feel that people should not wait for some major crisis to happen. Therapy can also be something like maintenance, where you go in for a regular checkup, like for physical health checkups. For health checkups, we go every year and we get all our tests done, whether it's a thyroid test or whether it's a blood count test or anything for that matter. But when it comes to mental health, we shy away from doing that. So again, because of all the stigma associated with it. So to answer your question, I do not feel that it is for people who are broken or crazy.
And because you said stigma, I want to ask you something. How do these fears of being named as weak or crazy affect the clients when they come to therapy? Do they ask, please do not tell my family, or they do tell, right? Do not tell anybody that I'm coming here. Of course, we do have our confidentiality agreements. We have our private, ethical issues that we follow. We don't tell people, others. As a part of my work, I tell my players every time I tell them something. See, when you tell me something, it's just between you and me. If you come today and tell me, Priyanka, I have a girlfriend, I'm keeping it between you and me because that's the trust we have with each other. You confide in me, I'll keep it with me. But tomorrow you come and tell I have a boyfriend, I'll still keep it with me. I'm not judging you. But if I see a red flag, like I see a suicidal tendency, if I see something destructive in your demeanor, I'm going to break the confidentiality and going to tell your immediate family members. So because we also keep a tab on their mental well-being from time to time from the conversations that we have. That is sports. But now I want to ask you, these terms that are thrown around like crazy, weak, or disorganized or distorted, disorganized is wrong. How does that affect the people who come to therapy?
I think it creates a lot of shame first.
Yes.
Shame is one thing that you see across all these clients who have been told that they are either crazy, they are weak-willed, they are not strong enough, or they're broken and all these things, because these are the narratives that we keep hearing while growing up. And this is intergenerational. So if you go back to our grandparents' time or our parents' time, they would just tell you that, okay, this is how life is going to be, so just suck it up or just deal with it. You don't need anyone for that. So when you're constantly hearing things like you don't need anyone, or this is how life is going to be, or it basically tells you that you have to deal with it all alone. If you don't, it means you're weak, or it means that there's something wrong with you.
Snigdha, most people shy away because of the stigmas, because they're either called crazy or weak. How do you work around those stigmas, and how do you respond to people's fears when they come to you? Or what happens in that typical first session when they come with not knowing what to expect, or they already come with a fear of stigma, they come with a name labeled. I'm sure everybody doesn't jump to therapy the moment they think they need therapy. They must have a lot of conversations with friends, families. People shy off from after talking to families. Friends would say, don't worry, we'll go out, have a drink, or go for a movie. And most people filter themselves before they come to you. Let's say 10 people think of taking therapy. By the time they come and knock the therapist's door, it's already 1 or 2 people.
Right.
Because of the stigmas of fears. So, I'm not saying 10 people should come for a business model, but they should come to understand their own selves.
Correct.
So, if those 10 people have to go to any therapist, but they have these fears, how do you respond to that? Or what happens typically in the first session of a therapy?
Okay, so I'll come back to this question about the first session, because I don't want to mix these two things up.
Yes.
But briefly, of course, I'll touch upon what happens in the first session. So I've heard these terms, crazy, weak, broken, umpteen number of times during my practice. Now, I strongly feel that they are a result of the stigma that people have experienced while growing up, the misunderstanding around mental health conditions, the faulty representation of mental illnesses on in media, and of course the way people show how people are, the way institutionalization is depicted. All these things contribute to the narrative of someone being weak, or the fact that someone is broken or crazy and all that. And it is not uncommon given the kind of society that we are in. So when these people come up with all the stories, I think first of all, we normalize the fear, all the concerns that they have. Because when you're coming with a set of ideas that I am crazy or I am broken, we try to understand where it is coming from. We then try to also take their own perspective on that, because these things are usually echoes of our past, of echoes of the people we are surrounded by, the echoes of the society that we grew up in, that probably labels this. When someone is seeking help, they are called weak.
Yeah.
Right. On the other hand, it's not, like I said earlier, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Again, think of our grandparents' generation, or even our parents for that matter. What are we told when you're having any problems in life? Oh, this is common. Ye to hota rehta hai. Suck it up. This is how the life is going to be. You need to be strong. You need to you cannot get deterred by all these things. So when all these things are constantly being, or when we keep hearing this constantly, one thing that comes to our mind is I have to be strong, and if I am seeking some help, it means I am weak. So it's not unnatural for them to feel that way. And again, the word mental gets thrown around so much. It breaks my heart when people say mental, because it has as a mental health professional and as someone who has spent more than a decade in this profession, I find it very uncomfortable when people use the word mental.
Yeah.
so carelessly. So anyway, to basically what I'm trying to say is I first try to understand where these fears are coming from and try to address them in the best possible way. I also normalize the help-seeking behavior. It's something like if someone has a broken bone, I don't think they would feel shy to go to a doctor and say that, oh, my bone is broken.
They rush.
They rush immediately. Or if someone has a viral fever, they would not mind taking the help of a professional. But why this double standards for mental health, right? So I try to normalize this behavior, that help seeking is fine. It's not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of courage because you're doing things that not many people have done.
Yes.
So that is something that I try to reframe that as courage. And other than that, I always make it a point to acknowledge and validate their feelings. Because while I want to help them, I also want to respect the feelings or respect their thought process. Where is this coming from? I don't want them to feel invalidated. So I do see, this is what therapy is. It's all about feeling understood and feeling validated. So if the therapist feels that, oh, why is the client feeling so shy? Oh, this is unnecessary. So there's this distance that gets created where the client might feel that, oh, why is she not able to understand? I'm feeling ashamed, but she's not on the same page as I am. So when I'm able to validate their feelings, when I'm able to, while normalizing and validating and acknowledging their feelings, they feel that, okay, both of us are on the same page. She gets me. And that is a very important aspect of rapport building, because without a rapport, there's no therapy. So this is what I help them understand. And I also tell them that whatever experience that they're having are shared human experiences. It's universal. All the feelings, all the emotions, all the experiences that they're having. So instead of feeling shy, it's really very brave of them to come out and accept it and start working on it.
That's so beautiful, because you said something called, I use the word rapport. You try to normalize. For them to get over the fear and to build that rapport, it takes a considerable amount of time in a session itself. So how do you balance the listening and giving strategies for them to work on their own? How do you, you can go on and on, because therapy is, we can go on and on in listening. But how do you balance between the thin line between listening and say, I've listened, now this is where you act. Therapy, because therapy is just not downloading all your emotions, but it's also about working on it. How do you draw a line and say, this is where you also start working, just not download,
See, first of all, drawing any sort of lines or having boundaries is when it comes to listening, and like, where does listening begin or where does listening end? And this is where working on self begins. These lines are very blurred. They depend on the kind of issues that the client comes to us with, and also what stage of therapy are we in. So these are the few determinants of the question of how we balance listening and what was the other word you said?
Taking strategies home, like say, this is how you work on it. You're spoken, now this is the time you act on it. We act on it.
So the initial sessions are usually, they involve a lot of listening, trying to allow the client to have this cathartic experience where they talk about everything that has been bothering them, or basically their entire life story. The first few sessions are more about you listening and trying to observe and absorb. By absorbing, I'm not saying that, I'm not talking about countertransference and all that. That's a different issue altogether. But by absorbing, I mean that you are trying to get a full holistic experience of what the client is going through. So once you do that, you have a better understanding, or you have a better worldview of, you have a better understanding of the client's worldview.
Yes.
Right? So once you do that, you can tailor your interventions accordingly. So this is when the skill building, or helping your client to feel more empowered, helping the client to gain more clarity, or helping the client to understand his world better comes in. So it's actually a delicate balance.
Yes.
So beautiful dance between both your listening skills and helping a client to strategize better, to plan better. So like I would call it like a nice dance, or beautiful balance, delicate balance between the two strategies, because it's difficult to draw lines when it comes to counseling skills.
Yes. Very beautiful word that you use. It's a beautiful dance. Okay, now that I want to bring to something. Sometimes the shame continues.
Yeah.
It's not that the therapist is ineffective. They just don't spend the entire day in the therapist's office and room. They also go back home. Sometimes they go and say, my therapist said this. Maybe that is true. But because the common people do not know what happens or what are the skills that are required, they say, "Oh, pagal hai re, isliye wo aise bol rahi, to mat jana." So sometimes they stop, they quit, they want to quit therapy, or they come back and they cry. Now, how do you deal with somebody who's crying to show them it is not a breakdown, it is but it is a breakthrough, or somebody wants to quit? How does a therapist handle a patient, a person who's not ready where he or she wants to be ready yet, but still wants to quit?
Okay, that's a very important question that you've raised, Priyanka, because crying, like you rightly mentioned, is a breakthrough, not a breakdown.
Yes.
Whether it's crying, whether it is a client not knowing what to say, I would never consider them as dead ends in therapy. They are more like signposts telling me to explore more. There's something more that's lying there, and I need to keep digging. So while crying, I always feel that it's one of the most vulnerable moments for a client. It's more like that release of the pent-up emotions, something that they were not looking at for a very long time. It's like it was probably these emotions or these experiences that made them cry were lying in some dark, dusty corner of their mind or heart. So in therapy, you remove all the dust, you help them acknowledge, you shine light on those areas that were never acknowledged or never looked at. And these areas tend to be very vulnerable because they were not looked at, they were asking to be looked at. So when a client feels keeps looking at them and tries to acknowledge it, it can be a very heartbreaking experience even for the client, because now this is when they're actually looking at it. This is when everything is making sense. And of course, they don't. Crying is always a signal. It always tells you that there's more. You have to keep exploring more. This is something that you haven't looked at. So it's a release of all the pent-up emotions. It is a genuinely honest and an extremely honest and a raw emotion. So I would always feel that whenever a client is crying, I would always feel that it's a very important moment for me in the session, because it takes tremendous amount of courage to talk about your issues.
Yes, yes.
And it takes even more to cry in front of a completely unknown person and feel so vulnerable in front of them. So when that happens, it often opens the gateway to a lot of other experiences that were not touched up until then. I always felt that crying is a breakthrough moment, usually in clients, because it is a necessary part of your healing. Without crying, you cannot heal. It reminds me of this line from Dear Zindagi. So when Shah Rukh Khan, who plays the role of Dr. Jahangir Khan, he asks Alia Bhatt's character that if you cannot cry openly, how will you heal? How will you laugh openly? Or how will you laugh to your heart's content? So I feel crying is very cathartic, which is why I think most of us, even when we cry, after we have completely cried our eyes out, it feels that there's a big load that has been removed, or there's a huge chunk or a big load that has been removed from our chest. So I think it is a breakthrough moment in any session.
Most people think, okay, we have let everything down, we have let our inhibitions down, we have let our emotions be dealt with, and if they want to quit therapy, though they are not ready to quit, they're not ready yet, where you as a therapist you as a therapist know that they're not ready yet, but they want to quit. How do we deal with those?
So this again brings in a lot of issues, meaning when a client wants to quit prematurely, or when they have a different understanding of what healing is, which is quite different from your understanding as a therapist. There's this discrepancy between what you think of healing and what they think of healing. So you need to gently explore that and ask a client what is urging them to quit therapy, or what makes them feel that they have healed, or why is it that they don't want to continue therapy anymore. So once you keep exploring that, you can keep asking them more questions to understand some of the things that probably you haven't understood. So when I said that there's a discrepancy, clearly there's a gap in understanding what you mean by healing, and what they mean by healing. So you're asking these questions not to interrogate them.
Yes.
You're asking these questions not to tell them that they're making a mistake, but you're asking these questions to get their understanding of what their healing looks like. At the end of the day, it's their call. If they want to end therapy, they are free to end therapy. But you could also gently touch upon some unfinished business. Like, of course, that, and again, I would leave that to the discretion of the therapist. But it's prudent to point out that there are certain issues that maybe you need to work on them. What do you think of them, and what are the plans that you have to deal with these issues? I'm sure that you have worked a lot in therapy up until now. Given some other issues that you brought up in our earlier sessions, what are your ways, or what is your understanding of dealing with them? So that way you are putting the ball in the client's court. You're telling them that they're strong. They're telling them that they are empowered enough to take care of themselves. But you're also gently pointing out that there is a lot of unfinished business as well. So this is on them. And also, just want to bring your attention to one more thing, that when someone wants to quit therapy prematurely, you need to find out if it is some kind of resistance, or is it some kind of, what's the right word for it? Discomfort that they're experiencing when it is about looking at some issues that they have buried long time back. When you don't want to look at some issues, when there's a lot of resistance, you say that acha mujhe nahi karna hai. Therapy is not easy work.
Yes.
Therapy would involve you looking at a lot of uncomfortable issues that you're dealing with, and then start working on them. So not everyone feels ready. So once you explore that, and once all that also comes out in the course of the conversation, you could work on that as well, saying that therapy tends to be an uncomfortable conversation. So sometimes it tends to be uncomfortable, and we can slow down the pace. If you're feeling that we are going at a faster pace, or if you feel very uncomfortable, or if you're feeling very anxious or not prepared to face the inner demons, or face something that you're not ready to face, we can always slow down the pace.
Snigdha, you said something important, but one of the reasons why they also quit therapy might be because technology is more accessible. And with the ever-evolving technology and even AI chats, how is therapy changing?
I agree that these chatbots, ChatGPT and all these things, they are transforming therapy.
Yeah.
The entire landscape of therapy is changing thanks to them. By their easy accessibility, immediate solutions to their problem, immediate so-called solutions to the issues, and also just the fact that it's there, it's right there. It's if I have an issue, I'll just type it in the ChatGPT chatbot, and I'll get some sort of solutions, whatever kind of solutions that I'm expecting. So while all these things are there, but I also feel that these all these platforms, they can augment human connection but cannot replace human connection. We have a very nuanced understanding of complex trauma. We have a very nuanced understanding of how empathy works, or how the amount of effort we all put in while building a rapport with a client. All these things cannot be done by a ChatGPT. Right? Or there's also this major issue of data privacy.
Yes.
Data is being stolen these days.
Yes.
And if you type in some very, very confidential information, there might be a very, very high possibility of data breaching.
Yes.
Sorry, breaching of privacy. So, and also potential misuse of information. All these things, you are safeguarded if you are going to a therapist.
Yes.
So I would strongly feel that while different platforms are there to help us. They're more of complementary approaches rather than a mainstream approach.
You're shying to come to a therapist, but you're putting your data, your privacy, and your confidential information at stake. That's one thing that most people do not touch. They say, I speak to quite a lot of people in my line of work, but they say, therapist is human. You miss that human connection, but you have touched upon the breach and the privacy part, and I'm really impressed with that. So now I want to ask you something. We all go to therapy as a crisis management or an afterthought. I am overwhelmed with work stress, let me see a therapist. I'm having relationship issues, let me see a therapist. Or I don't see a breakthrough in my life, so let me see a therapist. Do you see a future where it is more of preventive in nature rather than a crisis management or an afterthought? Right now, people go to therapy because there is something has happened and they're trying to get around it or mend it. But do you see like a mental health checkup, like a preventive thing? Do you see mental health going that way in the future, any near future?
Oh, absolutely. I think there is a shift that I have noticed in the way people are approaching mental health, especially more so in urban areas and in younger population. So they would want to go to a therapist to understand, or just for their own personal well-being, and they don't have to wait for, they usually don't wait for some major crisis to happen and then they'll visit a therapist.
Okay. మీకు ప్రాబ్లం వచ్చినప్పుడే థెరపీ కాదండి, మీరు బాగున్నప్పుడే థెరపీ తీసుకుంటే ఈరోజు మీరు ఒక పని బెటర్గా చేస్తుంటే రేపు ఆ పని ఇంకా వందింతలు చేయగలుగుతారు. అండ్ టుడే మీరు చెప్పినట్టు అగ్ని పర్వతాలు ఏది బ్లాస్ట్ అని ఐఎమ్ ఏబుల్ టు హ్యాండిల్ టుడే అంటే దట్ ఫేజ్ ఈజ్ అవుట్. ఓకే, నేను అంతం చేయాలనుకున్నది ఒకటి, కానీ నేను అంతం చేసింది నా ఆలోచన అంతం చేశాను ఫైనల్లీ డ్యూ టు ఐ టుక్ హెల్ప్. అండ్ ఎప్పుడైతే ఆవిడతో మాట్లాడడం మొదలుపెట్టానో నా ఫ్రెండ్స్తో మాట్లాడడం మొదలుపెట్టాను నేను.
సో దిస్ ఇస్ ఫర్ దెమ్ ఇట్స్ మోర్ like you said, a preventive measure. I have a lot of students who would just want to, come in, where they have a conversation with me, and they sometimes tell me that, ma'am, I'm going to a therapist. I know there's nothing happening in my life, but just to be on the safe side, or I just want to understand myself better, or things like, I know these are my these are my shortcomings, so I want to work better on them. I want to keep working on myself. So these are the various reasons why I would want to go to a therapist. So there's this shift that is happening, but the shift is slow and it's seen only in a particular demographic. So for a major overhaul to happen, I think it's going to take a lot of time, but for now, I think as a therapist, I'm quite happy with some changes that I'm seeing, though it's in urban population and of course more so in the younger crowd.
I want to ask you something. So this is happening in the more urban population, or tier 1 or tier 2, or younger population. But if there is someone who's curious to know what is therapy or what happens in therapy, now that we have explained everything, what if therapy is for them, but they still are hesitant because of the society, the cultural shifts that are happening, how we have been framed, whereas since our childhood, what is that one gentle step that they can take so that they can be ready?
So I think this is something that I keep telling a lot of people is educate yourself, bring in more awareness, try to read up on this mental health conditions, not mental health conditions per se, but try to get more information about what psychotherapy is all about, and then you look at therapist profiles, try to find out what their specializations are, and also a lot of therapists describe their approach. So if you could just probably have one consultation with the client, with the therapist, you will find out if it will work for you. It's something like some therapists when in the very first session, I think I'll come back to this once I answer this question. You asked me what is the first session all about.
Yes.
So the first session is it involves a lot of paperwork. It involves a lot of exchanging of information, trying to understand the client's history, trying to understand the client's problems, trying to make connections between the two, clearing out a lot of expectations that clients have about therapy. What happens in a therapy? What can they expect, what they should not be expecting, the fees and so on and so forth, and the different approaches that the clients or the therapists would be taking with the client when it comes to interventions. When all these questions are answered, the clients will have a better understanding of what therapy is, and then probably they can dip their toes in this. And this is actually, in fact, this first step is actually dipping the toes, and then that will give them a better clarity on whether they want to go into the sea or not. Because therapy is like walking into the sea and not just staying on the beach. So is what I understand of therapy.
That's quite beautiful in the way you put it. In spite of all this, there are myths, there are rumors, there are gossips. But if there is one rumor or one myth, one that you want to break forever about therapy, what that would be, Snigdha?
One thing that I strongly, very, very passionately feel about therapy is not for people who are weak, crazy, broken. I would want to probably break this myth. Therapy can be for anyone and everyone who wants to work on themselves.
I suggest everybody, అంతకుముందు థెరపీ వాస్ ఎ సిన్ లాగా, అంత బాగున్నా కూడా థెరపీ తీసుకోవాలి అప్పుడప్పుడు. ఇట్స్ వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్. దట్స్ వాట్ ఐ సజెస్ట్ అందరికి.
That is what I want to take you back from this episode, that therapy is not when you are broken, but when you think you are broken. Therapy is for you to know more about yourself, know how to handle life or how to handle issues that you have been facing. Some days therapy looks messy. Some days all you do in therapy is cry. But some days it's all about insights and it's all about clarity. That is the reason why you need to go to therapy, to build a relationship with yourself. Therapy does not give you a new life, but it teaches you how to live with the one you already have. Because this is just one life. If you're trying to make the most out of it professionally, you also have to make the most out of it emotionally and mentally. And you have to make it with compassion, clarity, honesty, and with courage. Thank you so much, Snigdha. I would like to take a lot away from this episode.
My pleasure.
And if you think this episode has added value, I would request you to share it with somebody who might want to watch this episode and wants to attend therapy but has hesitated until now. So until we come back with the next episode, stay curious, stay safe, and remember that you are just wired brilliantly but not differently. And until we come back to you, keep choosing growth. And thank you for listening to Sports Soul.